Welcome to Kiffin's Keep, an intellectual resource for the pillar and buttress of the truth, which is the church. This is a project of the London Lyceum, which is an institution dedicated to serious thinking for a serious church. I'm Jordan Stefaniak, host of Kiffin's Keep and president of the London Lyceum, and I'm excited to be back with you guys here on YouTube again today. I'm going to be talking once again about analytic theology. So naturally, if you guys know me, you probably know that I like analytic theology. I think it's a pretty useful tool, and it's not the only tool. It is a tool that I value and that I enjoy and I have a lot of fun with. Though there seems to be always these questions or these latent suspicions about the validity of analytic theology as true theology and the safety, or I guess for lack of a better word, orthodoxy of analytic theology. So I know I've talked a little bit about this in that initial episode I did on what is analytic theology and covering some of the objections. I thought maybe I'll talk a little bit about why I myself am attracted to analytic theology and see if that sort of self-description, a little bit of storytelling can give you a little bit of a different lens on what it is and why I think it's a useful tool for the orthodox Catholic lowercase c sense theologian. So analytic theology, let me start with my academic career a little bit. So I began as primarily a biblical theologian and exegete, primarily of the New Testament. So I was very much involved in that, and I think I still am involved in exegesis as any good Christian and good theologian should be. But over time, I've developed a love and passion for other things like historical theology, Reformed theology, and philosophy. And long story short, I think it was during my MDiv that my associate pastor was passionate about philosophy and got me to start reading various books. I think the first one that I read was an edited volume with Alvin Plantinga, Nick Wolterstorff, and others, Faith and Rationality. And it was from that period on that I began to engage more and more philosophy and found it more and more interesting and engaging than a lot of the theological material that I had been reading. And so that was partly just what attracted me to that. So for me, analytic theology is really a way to blend three of the things that I really love and I'm passionate about: Reformed theology and philosophy and historical theology. So let me explain how those things kind of go together. So philosophy, naturally, I think it makes sense that analytic theology is using philosophy as a handmaiden in particular, whereas like a historical theologian is going to use history as that sort of handmaiden to explain and unpack and examine doctrines. Analytic theology is really interested in using philosophy to do that. So I found in this contemporary body of literature just lots of interesting questions, unique tools, rigorous argumentation, and topics that I care about, things like metaphysics, things like epistemology. I mean, covering all the topics that I find just really interesting. So that's drawing me into this research program of analytic theology. And then, of course, historical theology as I begin to develop more skills in that and understand that. I'm engaging Calvin in the Reformed tradition. I'm beginning to be introduced to the Reformed Orthodox period, to the medieval period and the scholastic method. And what I'm finding in this methodology, this approach to theology, is a very rigorous, clear, methodological sort of program. And I see these parallels between this sort of scholastic approach and the analytic theologian's approach to the task of theology. And I see these things and I'm like, wow, I like how analytic theology is doing the things that I see here in the scholastic period in the Reformed Orthodox, because I value that sort of precision, that sort of care, that sort of rigor as well. So I'm being attracted to analytic theology from that. And also, I think I'm attracted to analytic theology because of the intellectual culture that it inhabits. So I like to think of myself as inhabiting the Reformed Catholic tradition. And when we say Reformed Catholic, that means, yes, confessing the basic Orthodox creeds together as the universal church, but it also has that posture of Catholicity, of humility, where while I may have my distinctives, I can still find friendship and brotherhood with those who disagree with my distinctives, but yet still hold fast to the same Orthodox confession and things like the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, and others. So I like this Catholic intellectual spirit that I find in analytic theology, where it's far more friendly of a posture, an openness of a posture toward other people and other differing views. There's a curiosity, and why would you think that? Explain that to me so I can have a better grasp and understanding of what it is that you're explaining. So even when I disagree with you, I'm still learning better about how to understand my own position, how to engage others who disagree with my own position. So all of these things end up, I guess, kind of forming me into someone who's interested in analytic theology. And what also, I think I mentioned it a little bit, is just I found in analytic theology a care and seriousness for the theological task that I just wasn't finding in other theological resources. So I'm finding a care for the creeds. I think I've mentioned this in various other places, where I think the first person that I read that really instilled in me a passion and understanding for the validity and use of the ecumenical creeds was Oliver Crisp, analytic theologian par excellence. So he's arguing in his Divinity and Humanity book, just explaining the various tiers of authority and how Scripture is that supreme authority, and underneath that you have this sort of creedal authoritarian boundary. And while, yes, you can deny an ecumenical creed, you better have a very, very, very good biblical reason to do so. And the fact that no one has had such a good biblical reason for 2,000 plus years, or I guess not 2,000 plus years, 1,600 plus years, whatever it is probably good evidence that if you want to reject it, there's probably some fault in your own thinking. And it revolutionized how I thought about the creeds, how I thought about the theological task and the process that goes on there. So really, for me, I became indebted to a lot of analytic theologians. So naturally, if I'm indebted to these and I find these guys who are being really useful and doing creative and faithful work, I want to be an analytic theologian myself. And if, as I've described, analytic theology is really just doing theology at a very high degree with a seriousness and using the tools of philosophy, particularly contemporary philosophy, but any philosophy really, in service of that theological task. So yeah, I want to be an analytic theologian. No, I don't think everybody has to be an analytic theologian. We need biblical theologians. We need systematic theologians. We need historical theologians. We need we need New Testament theologians, Old Testament theologians, or exegetes. We need all of these working together, pulling their weight in service of the truth. God has gifted us all with various different tasks, with various different interests, and we should all pull in the same direction. Me, I love philosophy. I think I'm just really passionate about it. And analytic theology is a way to meld these two worlds. So yes, I think it is true theological theology if done appropriately. So again, like I've explained elsewhere, analytic theology is not something that is given definitive dogmatic content. It's not as if you can be an analytic theologian, therefore you believe X, Y, and Z. That's not the case. It is a research program, just like the scholastic method is a research program with no definable content attached to it. So if the worry is analytic theologians, I'm suspicious of them because they're philosophers parading around as theologians and coming up with all sorts of bad theological conclusions. That's just a faulty way to understand what analytic theology is, and it really displays an ignorance of it. And I would suggest that you begin to read it and understand what's going on in the discipline of analytic theology, because, quite frankly, it's scholasticism 2.0 in my book. It's engaging the latest contemporary philosophical literature in service of theology. So I take the John Websterian theological theology approach. I think that is sort of the right way to think about theology, where God's word is fundamentally the most creative and foundational thing that we are engaging in, and we're receiving that, and we are really just commenting on that to a large extent. But I think analytic theology is just a great tool to do that in a particular mode with a particular set of tools to engage and assist with that. So in my mind, that's why I want to be an analytic theologian. Now, there's more reasons than that, I'm sure, but that's part of it. Is just I love philosophy, and I think it's a useful tool. I'm also indebted to a lot of analytic theologians, and as I've explained, my passion for Reformed theology, my passion for historical theology, my passion for philosophy, I think all these things can be melded together in this analytic theology sort of research program. I think I can do all of the theology that I'm trying to work out in that program. And as I mentioned, the sort of Catholic intellectual spirit, that I appreciated about it. So that's my own story a little bit. I'd be curious to hear yours of why you think analytic theology is good or bad, if you think I've mistaked something or misunderstood something. And again, I totally forgot at the beginning of this video, since these are mostly extemporaneous. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like this video if you enjoyed it. If you didn't enjoy it, just pretend you didn't enjoy it and don't click the not like thing. I'm kidding. You can hit dislike if you actually dislike it, but you got to leave me a comment if you do that or something. Other than that, yeah, I'd look forward to hearing from you guys. As I mentioned in that other analytic theology video, I'd love to hear comments, thoughts. I'll do another one on analytic theology if this continues to be of interest and be of use. So hopefully this was useful in some sense. And I'm happy to do more personal sort of stuff too, to explain sort of my own theological journey and how I came to the positions that I hold. And I assume the Lord will continue to sanctify me the rest of my life and teach me and grow me in different ways. So thanks for tuning in. This has been an episode of Kiffin's Keep in hopefully record time. I'm not quite sure. And I'll talk to you guys soon and think with you then.